Week. I'm Liz Lander, and I'm the Religious Education Assistant at the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. This week, in Reimagining Chapel, we will learn about our second source of spiritual inspiration, the words and deeds of prophetic people. So, what does that mean? A prophet is a person who can see into the future or speak to the divine. Now, I think that you have chosen to lift up the words and deeds of people who have made an impact on our faith and on the future. This includes the words and actions of many people who weren't Unitarian Universalists, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., of course, or maybe the poet Mary Oliver, and so many other people whose words and deeds inspire us. One prophetic voice that did belong to a Unitarian was that of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. He was born in 1807 in Portland, Maine, but at the time of his birth, Portland was still part of, you guessed it, Massachusetts. He became the most notable and influential poet in America in his lifetime. His epic poems like the Song of Hiawatha and Evangeline were so popular they became regarded as American myths that later became part of our culture and our history, even though they were stories that he made up. America was still a very young country, and our achievements in art were not impressing the rest of the world much. Longfellow called for high-quality American literature, which means the books and the poems that we write. To paraphrase a character in his novel Kavanaugh, he said, "We want a national literature that is as impressive as our mountains and rivers. We want a national epic as big as our country. We want a national drama about the gigantic ideas and the amazing activities of our people. In a word, we want a national literature altogether shaggy and unshorn that shall shake the earth like a herd of buffaloes thundering over the prairies." Whew. So, having spent time in Europe, Longfellow knew firsthand that America had a unique landscape and a thrilling new perspective to offer to the world. Not surprisingly, Longfellow became friends with many other notable UUs of the week, including Ralph Waldo Emerson, Louisa May Alcott, and the other transcendentalists that were all kicking around Boston at about that same time. Like them, Longfellow found spiritual inspiration in nature. I think he wished more people would learn from it. In his poem called Nature, he compares it to a mother, and we are her sleepy, grumpy child who doesn't always appreciate what nature has given us. Longfellow wrote about his family more than a few times. He was a devoted husband and father, but his family life was full of tragedy. He was widowed twice and wrote about his sadness when each of his wives died. I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day was a poem and later a Christmas carol, which he wrote about his son getting injured in the Civil War. Now, Longfellow was not terribly outspoken about politics, but he did speak out against slavery and also wished for peace between the North and the South. He frequently used his poetry to remind his readers of cultural and moral values based on Unitarianism, hoping his words would help the nation find its way during a difficult time. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow achieved his goal of putting American literature on the map. He was the most famous poet in his lifetime and is still the only American who is commemorated in the Poets' Corner at Westminster Abbey. Longfellow's words became American history. He made a hero out of Paul Revere when his poem drew national attention to the previously little-known story. His poem, Paul Revere's Ride, was the inspiration for the famous statue of Paul Revere designed by fellow Unitarian and Utah native Cyrus Dallin, which still stands in Boston today. Longfellow's prophetic words about history, the human experience, bravery, and moral values touched the future and still inspire us today as Unitarian Universalists. Thank you for joining me for another exciting UU of the Week, and we'll see you next time.